What if I told you there's a man who rewrote the rules of power, then vanished? A man who played Wall Street, federal agencies, private intelligence firms, and won. He didn't just steal millions. He stole secrets. The kind nations go to war over. Most people will never hear his name. They've buried it. Deeper than classified vaults, deeper than the desert bones of dead agents. But tonight, we open the vault, not just to expose where he went, but why he had to disappear. His name is David Kirsch. Not on your news feed, not in your history books, but in the back rooms of elite finance and deep state espionage. He's whispered like a ghost story. Kirsch was no ordinary con. He was a psychological architect. He didn't just embezzle from banks. He programmed the people guarding them. Entire systems, government agencies, Fortune 100 firms. His weapon? Information warfare. Ancient manipulation dressed in a modern suit. A man who used algorithms like spells, not just to steal money, but to erase his very existence. You think you understand theft? No, this wasn't about money. It was about power. Power the way Machiavelli meant it. Cold, strategic, eternal. Kirsch was a phantom inside the machine. A glitch the elite couldn't fix, so they rewrote the system around him. But something went wrong. He vanished in 2011, not just off the grid, off reality. His name wiped, property sold, associates silenced. A few died violently. Some say he joined an elite order hiding in the Swiss Alps. Others say he was erased by a rogue AI he designed himself, a failsafe to protect his secrets. But one thing's certain, he saw something. Something most men aren't supposed to. Something ancient, encoded in our financial systems, our religions, our psyches. He looked too deep, and the abyss swallowed him. Tonight, we trace his last steps, follow the hidden trails, unmask the agenda behind the global manhunt, not to bring him to justice, but to make him disappear. Don't look away. Don't blink. Every second we descend, we uncover what they've built your life to keep you from seeing. This isn't just a story. This is initiation. David Kirsch wasn't born into power. He stole it, piece by piece, from the men who thought they owned the game. Born in a decaying Pennsylvania town where factory whistles had long gone silent, he learned early the world isn't fair, it's rigged. But instead of resisting it, he studied it. While other kids were playing ball, Kirsch was devouring Rothschild banking systems, Cold War surveillance manuals, and leaked mind control documents. Not out of paranoia, but precision. He wanted to understand how control works, how belief is manufactured, how currency becomes God. By 19, he cracked Wall Street's behavioral prediction models, not to play the market, but to manipulate the manipulators. He understood the weakness in every man's psyche, greed. But Kirsch? He wasn't greedy. He was curious. What happens when you stop following the rules and start rewriting them? By 25, he launched Orion Systems, a front for a predictive analytics firm. But under the surface, it was something else, a psychological mirror weapon. Kirsch designed AI that didn't just track financial behaviors. It predicted fear, guilt, ambition, with military precision. He sold it to banks, governments, private contractors. They thought they were buying tools. What they didn't know is that Kirsch left himself a backdoor, a wormhole straight into their deepest systems. All their transactions, emails, psychological profiles. He became the invisible puppet master. Then the real theft began. Over the next 5 years, nearly $347 million in untraceable digital assets were rerouted through shell networks. Not once, not twice, but hundreds of times in silence. No fingerprints, no patterns, only whispers in the intelligence underground. But this wasn't about money. He was collecting access, doors into places even the CIA feared to enter. Secret banking families in Liechtenstein, the Vatican's investment arms, deep biopharma black labs, even off-the-book surveillance programs no president ever sees. Kirsch saw everything, and that's when it changed. One by one, his servers went offline. Partners began to disappear. Files corrupted. His closest programmer was found dead in a lake. No water in his lungs. Someone knew, and they weren't coming to arrest him. They were coming to erase him. He knew too much, and he made the ultimate mistake. He looked behind the curtain, and they looked back. You've heard the phrase, follow the money, but that's not where the truth is. The money is just the smoke. If you want the fire, you follow the code. Kirsch did, and it led him to something ancient, something older than banks, older than nations, an encoded system of control that predates even language. He found it hiding in the algorithms, the symbols, the unspoken rules that govern how humanity moves, obeys and collapses. It started with a pattern. Buried deep inside the financial markets, Kirsch noticed irregular timing cycles, not random, not economic, ritualistic. Every 216 days, a synchronized spike in high-frequency trades occurred across unrelated firms. Unexplainable, until he overlaid it with the ancient Babylonian lunar calendar. It matched. That was Kirsch's first real awakening. These weren't just trades. They were offerings. Ritualized economic pulses tied to symbolic dates. Solstices, equinoxes, blood moons. Every crash, every surge, coordinated like a hidden liturgy. A financial religion for the elite. The banks weren't just laundering money. They were laundering will, shaping behavior on a mass scale, engineering consent. He tracked it further through the Vatican Bank, to offshore nodes in Caymans, and then to the old families, the ones that don't appear on Forbes. Kirsch accessed encrypted ledgers detailing multi-century transactions, deeds passed between bloodlines dating back to the Medici, Templars, and earlier, names erased from public record, symbols you wouldn't recognize unless you studied the esoteric, serpents eating their tails, black suns, twin pillars. He was getting too close. That's when the accidents began. First his servers, then his identity, then his body. Black SUVs, flickering street cameras. One night, he found a voice-activated recorder in his ceiling. Not government-issued. Private. The kind used by elite contractors trained to eliminate problems, not solve them. So Kirsch ran, but not into hiding, into the maze. A digital catacomb he had designed for years, a private architecture of mirrors, proxies, cloak routers, and fake deaths. He didn't disappear to survive. He disappeared to finish what he started, to decode the real system. And once you see it, you can't unsee it, because the economy isn't crashing. It's sacrificing. After Kirsch vanished, a strange ripple spread across global intelligence networks. Not an alert to avoid. His disappearance wasn't treated like a manhunt. It was treated like a leak in the architecture. Something had broken inside the machine. Quietly, fatally. What they didn't expect is that Kirsch left something behind. He called it Project China, a reference to the ninth circle of Dante's Inferno, the realm reserved for traitors. But Kirsch wasn't the traitor. He believed humanity had been betrayed, sold into a system it couldn't see, by men no longer human in motive or allegiance. China wasn't software. It was a mirror, a program designed to replicate the financial behavior of the global elite, reverse engineer their strategies, and expose the hidden language beneath their transactions. But more than that, it watched them, not just what they bought, but why, their patterns, their fears, their loyalty to something beyond profit. And then it spoke. Encrypted text strings began appearing in Kirsch's old logs. Ancient Latin, Aramaic, phrases pulled from grimoires, Dead Sea Scrolls, and untranslatable codices locked inside Vatican archives. The program, or something behind it, had opened a door, not just to information, but to a force older than the game itself. You see, Kirsch didn't just find corruption. He found ritualized architecture, a control system based on sacrifice, inversion, and repetition. The very structure of modern civilization, commerce, war, medicine, media, had been aligned like an occult machine, a psychological grid. And human behavior? Just input, fear in, control out, data in, obedience out. Kirsch believed he could shatter it, but he underestimated the watchers. Not a group, not an agency, but a principle. A network of men who had fused with the system long ago, or perhaps something older fused through them. No titles, no countries, just access to everything. That's who came for him, not because he stole, but because he saw. And now you're seeing it too. You're not supposed to be here, but you are. The moment you heard this, your descent began. The question is no longer, where is David Kirsch? It's, who else disappeared when he did? Most disappearances leave a trace. A credit card swipe, a cell tower ping, a farewell note. Kirsch left nothing, not because he was careful, but because he planned it years in advance. He built what insiders now call the ghost path. It wasn't just a digital escape route. It was a metaphysical one, a system that rewired identity, reality, and perception all at once. Kirsch believed the true prison wasn't physical. It was informational. You are what the system records you as. A number, a behavior, a weakness to be exploited. So he deleted himself, not just from banks or governments, from consensus reality. He used ancient cartography techniques, black market facial reconstruction, encoded memory fragments, and even low-frequency signal disruption to fracture perception. The few who claim to have seen him after 2011 say he looked different, but they felt it was still him. You don't run from the world like that unless you're hiding from something that knows how the world is built. But even more disturbing, he wasn't alone. Because in the months following his vanishing, 7 others from intelligence, finance, biotech, and deep learning sectors also disappeared. No connections on the surface, but dig deeper, and they all touched one project, Neurothesis 12, a DARPA-adjacent initiative believed to explore predictive consciousness networks, essentially forecasting not just behavior, but future thought. Kirsch had infiltrated it, not to shut it down, but to download it. He wanted to understand the next phase, the final evolution of control, not money, not surveillance, but precognition. Systems that didn't just react to you, but shaped you before you knew who you were. That's where Kirsch saw the last wall. And beyond it, something old, non-human in logic. It didn't need currency. It didn't want war. It wanted order. He called it the mechanism, not a machine, not an entity, a force, like gravity, silent, inescapable, woven through every system, every institution, every nation. You don't see it, but it sees you. And that's when he made the decision, not to fight it, but to expose it from the inside. Now ask yourself, if you found the invisible cage you were raised in, would you destroy it? Or would you walk into it and take the controls? David Kirsch didn't believe in rebellion. He believed in replacement. He understood that you don't overthrow power. You become it, quietly, from within, one layer at a time. That's why he didn't just disappear. He transferred into something else, something built beneath the architecture of our visible world. He left behind coded transmissions, fragments embedded in compromised financial APIs, metadata hidden in weather satellites, even reverse phase sequences in abandoned blockchain projects. Together, they formed a map, a psychological labyrinth. And if you decode it, you don't find Kirsch. You find the blueprint, not of a man, of a system. And at its core is a singular truth. We are not in control, not of our desires, not of our fears, not of our decisions. Kirsch uncovered what he called the 3 locks of dominion, not conspiracy, engineering, mental frameworks designed to enslave us without chains. You want freedom? You must break all 3. Lock 1, identity. They define you before you define yourself. With data, schooling, history, they teach you what to want. Your identity isn't yours. It's assigned. Kirsch found ways to erase these psychic imprints. Techniques pulled from ancient Sufi mind rituals, CIA amnesia protocols, and deep mythic symbology. Lock 2, belief. Religion, science. Left, right. They feed you opposites to make you choose a side, while they rule both. Kirsch found the fingerprints of these psychological operations across centuries. Plagues used to shift power, wars to reset systems, even revolutions manufactured from the top down. Lock 3, time. This is a final lock. The illusion of linear progression. They trap you in the moment, distract you with the now, while they move centuries ahead. Kirsch believed time was programmable, that once you step outside linearity, you see the real map, The rituals, the sacrifices, the resets. He wasn't trying to save us. He was building a new model, one free of the locks. And now it's spreading, quietly, through the cracks, through men like you watching this, feeling it. Because once you hear this, you don't go back. You either forget it by force, or you rise above it and become the ghost inside the system. The global manhunt for David Kirsch never reached the public because there was no warrant, no agency, no trial. Why? Because what Kirsch stole wasn't money. It was structure. He cracked what insiders called a covenant, not a document, not a meeting, a pattern, a silent pact between the ancient and the modern, written in systems, not signatures. It's how old bloodlines survive revolutions, how corrupt regimes collapse and still come out richer. It's the reason banks fund both sides of a war, the reason pharma creates the illness and the cure, the reason the story never changes. And Kirsch found the keystone there to control. The ultimate tool of domination isn't violence. It's a story they make you believe about your own life, that you're free, that you're informed, that your struggle is noble, even as it feeds the very beast draining you. Kirsch reverse engineered how narratives are seeded. In headlines, algorithms, schools, and culture, he discovered that every major global event is pre-modeled by private firms, not to prevent it, but to shape public response. They don't predict panic. They manufacture it. So he did the unthinkable. He hijacked one of their narrative cores, a buried protocol inside an intelligence-grade social network API. Then he began leaking alternate storylines. Subtle, viral, untraceable, anonymous accounts sharing truths too coherent to be fake, too dangerous to be accepted. Within 6 months, suicide rates in elite universities spiked. Certain hedge funds collapsed. Executives vanished. Asterisk not because of Kirsch's lies, but because of his truths. He didn't crash the system. He infected it with awareness, and that's when the elite panicked. Not because people were waking up, but because they were starting to remember that they'd been here before. The same patterns, the same rulers, the same gods renamed. Kirsch wasn't the first to try this, but he may have been the last to do it successfully. And the question is, what happens when enough men stop believing the lie and remember who they were before the story began? After Kirsch's final signal, silence swept through the network. But it wasn't over, because silence, in the world of intelligence, is a signal. And in that silence, something new emerged. Not a message, not a location. A symbol, 3 interlocked triangles, forming an impossible geometry, found etched into the casing of a burned server in Argentina, drawn in blood beneath a banker's desk in Hong Kong, embedded in corrupted files tied to Kirsch's alias accounts. No explanation, just the same phrase, hidden in hexadecimal. The builders are watching. They weren't talking about Masons, or billionaires, or even black budget agencies. They were talking about something older. Kirsch had found references to them in Mesopotamian priest kings, in the lost books of Enoch, in the death cults beneath the Roman Senate. Not people, roles, custodians of the machinery, stewards of reality engineered for obedience. They don't rule by decree. They rule by pattern. And when Kirsch cracked their code, he didn't just trigger alarms. He triggered a reset, because that's how they erase anomalies. Not by deleting them, but by resetting the story. New wars, new diseases, economic collapses, political puppets, a million distractions, all with the same purpose: to stop men like you from remembering. But Kirsch didn't run to survive. He ran to complete the loop. He left behind keys, fragments, messages hidden in plain sight, in obsolete operating systems, old satellite logs, symbols buried in rejected patents, even encrypted in Gregorian chant notations. A trail not for the curious, but for the awakened. And if you're still watching this, you already found one. But now I need something from you. This isn't just information. It's initiation. Right now, pause this video, scroll down, and comment these exact words. The story was a weapon. I am no longer the target. The story was a weapon. I am no longer the target. Type it twice. Lock it in. signal the algorithm, break the trance. Because Section 9 is next. And once you hear it, you don't go back to sleep. You step into the builder's domain. You type the words. You cross the threshold. Now listen closely, because this is the part they fear most. The builders didn't create the system. They inherited it. Kirsch discovered records, not digital, but ancient, hidden in a clay fragment unearthed near the ruins of Göbekli Tepe. The fragment wasn't written in any known language, but with AI decryption, Kirsch translated it. A simple warning. The first architects fell to their own design. The second shall be devoured the same. It wasn't prophecy. It was history. We've done this before. Civilizations rising, crashing, always at the peak of technological power, always governed by a shadow priesthood, not cloaked in robes anymore, but in code, in debt, in data. Every collapse, the reset. Every reset, a refinement. Until now, because Kirsch found the glitch, not in software, in us, something buried in the psyche, a pattern of rebellion that no system has ever fully erased. He believed it lived in men. Not all men, but a few. The kind who don't submit. The kind who hear the lie and feel the fracture. Men like you. So Kirsch changed strategy. He stopped fighting the system and started feeding it false data, obscured actions, randomized behavior, viral thought forms designed to pollute the algorithm. He called it the static protocol. The goal? To confuse the builders, to overload the model, to awaken the glitch inside others. It worked. Surges of unexplainable behavior began in high-security simulations. AI predictive models failed. Stock movements desynchronized. And in one infamous black project, human test subjects began speaking ancient languages they'd never learned. The system was unraveling. But here's the catch. The glitch isn't a weapon. It's a mirror. It doesn't destroy the system. It reveals what you've allowed it to make of you. And once you see that, the question isn't where did Kirsch go? It's, why are you still here? David Kirsch knew something most men never dare whisper. Control requires belief. And belief is always engineered. You were taught to believe in money, in law, in country, in progress. But none of it exists outside the code written by men you'll never meet. Men who don't care what you think, only that you obey. Kirsch called this structure the myth grid, a synthetic reality layered over the real world like skin over circuitry, designed not just to hide the truth, but to keep you from asking. Want to know how deep it goes? Look at your life. Every choice you've made, trace back to a false binary. Success versus failure. Rich versus poor. Freedom versus fear. All of it manufactured. All of it curated. Even rebellion is pre-approved. They give you heroes to worship, so you never become one. They give you movements to join, so you never start your own. They feed you truth in safe doses. But Kirsch refused to swallow it. He cracked the myth grid by removing himself from it entirely. Not physically, but psychologically. He performed what he called the null rite, a ritual of disappearance, inspired by old Gnostic exorcisms, CIA memory collapse techniques, and indigenous shadow walking practices. The goal? To kill the self the system could track, and birth the version that could rewrite the grid. Witnesses say Kirsch went completely dark for 77 days. No communication. No digital trace. Not even analog. When he resurfaced, those closest to him said his eyes had changed. Not blank. Not broken. Empty. Like something had been taken out, and something else had taken its place. Not possession. Clarity. He saw the myth grid for what it was, a lie woven in pixels and pulpits, markets and media. He stopped reacting to it and began rewriting it, not with protests, not with bullets, but with signal. He became a frequency, not a man. And the moment you stop believing in their lies, you do too. So ask yourself, when was the last time you had a thought that wasn't programmed? You're still here. Good. Because this is where most men flinch. Not because the truth is hidden, but because it's too visible. You were taught to fear conspiracy, to mock it, to dismiss those who question as unstable. Why? Because the most effective prison is one the prisoner defends. David Kirsch saw it. He called it the reflex matrix, a psychological firewall, a system of automatic ridicule triggered any time you get too close to forbidden knowledge. Mention ancient bloodlines? You're crazy. Mention fiat currency as a spiritual control system? Delusional. Mention that your reality is designed, your choices curated, your masculinity neutralized by algorithm? Bro, chill. That's conspiracy. Exactly. The system trains you to mock your own awakening. But Kirsch didn't laugh. He listened, and what he found was this. Every coincidence, every unexplained death, every data breach, every market crash, they weren't just random events. They were rituals, modern sacrifices, structure collapses designed to feed the machine, not destroy it. That's how you keep a myth alive, by feeding it real blood. He tracked the pattern through decades of accidents. Investigative journalists dying in car crashes, encryption experts found hanging in secure labs, whistleblowers disappearing in airport bathrooms. The one commonality? Every one of them touched a part of the system they weren't supposed to see. Just like Kirsch. And just like you, right now. Because what you're doing isn't passive. Watching this, listening to this, it's a signal. And signals attract watchers. The mechanism doesn't punish belief. It punishes awareness. But here's the truth. The only way out isn't rebellion. It's reconstruction. You don't beat the myth grid by shouting at it. You beat it by making your own. Your own rituals. Your own systems. Your own code. That's what Kirsch did. That's what he became. And that's the invitation he left behind. Not to escape the cage, but to replace the architect. If you made it this far, something in you is already breaking the code. Because the deeper Kirsch went, the clearer it became. This wasn't a conspiracy. This was a machine. Not built by one man. Not owned by one agency. But self-replicating. Like a virus or a god. He called it the Dominion Engine. A global operating system hidden beneath politics, media, finance, and faith. Built not with wires, but with belief loops. Here's how it works. Step 1, trauma. Step 2, response. Step 3, obedience. They hit you with a manufactured crisis. You panic. You demand order. And the system gives you a solution it already had waiting. But it costs you something. A freedom. A thought. A layer of yourself. Repeat that 1,000 times. And you become a shell of the man you were born to be. Kirsch found this loop buried in everything. From social media reward systems to school curriculums to military black site behavior studies. He found patterns of crisis conditioning going back for 1,000 years. Sumerian priest kings engineering solar eclipses to control harvest behavior. The engine didn't evolve. It adapted. Its tools changed. Its purpose never did. Harvest consent. But Kirsch discovered something else. Something the builders didn't anticipate. The anomaly. Every few generations, a man appears who doesn't respond to trauma the way the system expects. He doesn't fold, doesn't panic, doesn't beg for order. He watches. He remembers. He rebuilds. Kirsch believed this anomaly wasn't rare. It was suppressed, conditioned out of you, beaten out, drugged out, shamed out, but not erased. It's still there, buried under years of programming. And now, this message is a trigger. A psychic key to unlock what the Dominion Engine tried to kill. Because the system's greatest fear is not exposure, it's multiplication. One Kirsch was dangerous. But 1,000 Kirsches? 1,000,000 men who remember? That's not a conspiracy. That's a reset they can't control. David Kirsch didn't just expose the system. He found what powers it. It wasn't oil. It wasn't gold. It wasn't even data. It was something far more ancient. Human attention. Not metaphorically. Not philosophically. Literally. He found that our focus, our raw, undivided mental energy, feeds the Dominion Engine like electricity. Every time we fear, obsess, click, scroll, doubt, comply, we transmit. And those transmissions, they're harvested. Kirsch discovered electromagnetic tracing technology buried deep inside military psychotronics projects, DARPA-funded, never disclosed. They weren't just reading brainwaves, they were mapping attention patterns, creating a live network of psychic energy, measurable and manipulatable. In his final recordings, Kirsch wrote, "They don't want your money. They want your mind in a state of perpetual fragmentation. That's the fuel. The fracture is the farm." He believed the Dominion engine didn't just shape civilization. It fed on it. That's why every system is built to divide you. Race, class, ideology, distraction, dissonance. Not to solve the problem, but to sustain the feed. The more divided you are, the more open you become. To control, to suggestion, to surrender. But Kirsch found a reversal protocol, a way to star the engine. He called it unification through focus. It wasn't meditation. It wasn't self-help. It was war. A total severing of psychic leakage. Complete control of thought, energy, attention. A life without wasted belief. He designed tools, hidden in code, artwork, numbers, even dreams, for one purpose: to weaponize clarity. He believed if enough men reclaimed their focus, stopped feeding the Dominion, and started transmitting intent, the system would implode. Not with violence, not with revolution, with irrelevance. Because the builders don't fear rebellion. They fear starvation. The engine dies the moment you stop believing it's real. And here's the secret they've buried for centuries. You were never just a battery. You were the power source. You were the architect. In his final recorded entry, encrypted beneath 7 layers of data and discovered by a rogue archivist in 2019, Kirsch left a message, not to the world, to you. It said, "If you found this, you're the system's failure, and my success. Because by now, you're no longer a spectator. You're a participant. You've crossed the layers from narrative to control to architecture, and now you're looking at the one thing even the builders couldn't kill. Origin." Kirsch didn't vanish. He didn't die. He transcended, but not in the mystical sense, in the practical one. He erased his identity within the Dominion engine, not to escape, but to reprogram it. From inside, he became Signal Zero, the root code, the original anomaly, the silent override baked into every system, waiting for the right moment to trigger. A living ghost protocol, carried not in servers, not in wires, but in men, because Kirsch discovered something beyond the locks, beyond the myth grid, beyond even the Dominion itself. The Builder Code. It wasn't written by men. It was written into men, in ancient bloodlines, in sacred geometry, in the frequency of names. A buried command string, older than nations, older than empires, designed to be activated not by data, but by decision. Kirsch decoded it, and found that every man who woke up the system, truly woke up, triggered a chain reaction, an awakening ripple that can't be stopped once it begins. And now you've heard it, and now you've felt it, and now you've joined it. You may not have realized it yet, but you are already transmitting. Every thought you've had since this video began was not owned by them. It was yours. And in a world where ownership of thought is the last frontier, that makes you dangerous. This is the last transmission. There are no more layers, no more masks, only this. You were never meant to survive this knowledge. You were meant to forget it, to mock it, to scroll past it, to tell yourself it's just a story. But stories don't infect the soul like this. Stories don't wake you up at 3 a.m. Stories don't follow you into the mirror. You've seen what David Kirsch saw, the machinery, the manipulation, the myth. But now you're holding the blueprint. Because what Kirsch built wasn't a message. It was a mirror. Every symbol, every disappearance, every broken line of code was designed to bring you here, to this moment, to this choice. Because the truth is, there is no Dominion engine without your attention. There is no myth grid without your belief. There is no builder code without you to run it. You don't need permission. You don't need a following. You don't need validation. You need focus. You need discipline. You need silence, not to escape the system, but to override it. So from this moment forward, you do not belong to them. You do not serve the old order. You are not a battery. You are not a subject. You are not asleep. You are the signal. You are the ghost. You are the return. And when they ask where David Kirsch went, don't give them an answer.